Welcome back, everybody, to the Success Partner Podcast. I'm your host, Daya Naef, and today I'm so delighted to have Rina Wang with us. Rina Wang is a general counsel and also knows a lot about employment law. So I'm so excited to have her here and have this conversation today. So, hi, Rina.
Hi, I'm so glad to be catching up with you, Dave.
Curious. So tell us a little bit about like your journey into general counsel so that we may, know more about that.
I graduated from law school in December 2009. It was a rough time in the economy. I did start out practicing in employment law, so defending employers when they're sued. That's always recession proof as a practice. I also clerked in the federal courts. I just absolutely love the variety of cases that I saw in the federal court, and wanted more variety in my practice. And one of the great things about being in-house counsel for the company, as the company's sole lawyer, or one or two or three lawyers, is that you do see everything. So I wanted to transition my way into an in-house role, and I did that by contracting. So all in-house jobs want you to have in-house experience, and it's chicken or egg, and it's like, where do you start? So I took a couple of contracts, and from there I got my first full-time in-house job as head of legal at Silvaco, a software company. And so that was a great learning experience. I'd had a lot of transactions, did M&A, intellectual property, and I kept doing my employment counseling. And to keep up my background in employment law for the last 5 years, I've been training clients on managing within the law and respectful workplaces. And so I really do like that work. It allows me to really get to know clients in different industries, and I also get to do a little bit of travel with that, which is nice, because in the typical desk lawyer job, you're just in one place, not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's also one of the reasons I was in-house counsel as well for a while. I loved the variety of work that came, and then working at it was a construction company, so I was out in the field a lot of the time. So definitely very enjoyable. Tell us a little bit more about what you see and new trends coming up in the labor law.
Yeah, it's interesting. This year, the FTC wanted to ban non-competes. So I'm based in California, in San Francisco, as you could see by my Zoom backdrop, where we've had a ban on non-competes for a long time. So didn't change anything for us necessarily, but it does affect California employers with employees in other states where non-competes are allowed. There was quite a lot of hustle and leading up to the rule, but it got adjoined by a court in Texas. So we're in this phase now where a lot of states are allowing similar rules to California, where it's just okay, it's a restraint on trade. We're not going to allow non-competes, but this new administration, now that we're in, come 2025, it's going to throw a lot of question marks into non-competes. I'm sure with our new president, there's going to be even more resistance against the FTC rule. So it's going to be interesting times ahead.
Yeah. And FTC for our non-lawyer listeners is what?
The Federal Trade Commission. So they're the federal agency that propagates rules, typically in the vein of consumer protection. So no false advertising, for instance. And so it is interesting that one of the criticisms of this rule was that the FTC was overstepping its jurisdiction in saying employers cannot enforce non-competes. But on the flip side, from an employee rights perspective, it does really hamper an employee's mobility if they're not able to, after their job, find a similar job in a competing organization. And it affects really day-to-day low-level folks as well. Like it could be crazy circumstances, like you're a yoga instructor, you have a non-compete, so you can't teach at another yoga studio. That's like not the intention, I think, ultimately, of non-compete laws. It's more the traditional, not controversial context for a non-compete is, okay, in an M&A context, your company is acquired, you're one of the execs there, you can't go and start a competing organization when your last company was acquired.
Mhm.
Like the
Yeah, it's
famous
mhm.
oh, sorry. The famous
No,
example of
go
this
ahead.
is um so Bobby Brown sold her cosmetics company to Estee Lauder, and she had a non-compete for about 25 years. And the day the non-compete lifted, she started her own company again. So she had planned in doing that deal and thinking, oh, when I'm that old, I won't want to be working anyway. But she got started this new company. And so, yeah, it's I think I'm of the perspective, I'm Californian, that if there are entrepreneurs, if they have these great ideas, they shouldn't have to wait, in my opinion, those 25 years to bring new ideas, new products to market.
Yeah, 25 years is a long time. Um, yeah, most of the states I've worked with or whatever had a reasonable time, and then it would also be tied to some sort of compensation. So in behind, instead of the sweeping broad, no, you can't do it, it was more of a, you can do it for a reasonable amount of time and having received some sort of compensation. So it was interesting to watch it become more commonplace to not have it than to have it, and kind of watching that roll out over the last probably decade. It's been kind of up in the air in different states.
Mhm.
Oh. So what do you, like you mentioned about what you like about being a general counsel? What are some of the cons to being a general counsel?
Well, I think it's a blessing and a curse to do all legal matters for a company. And I've found that it's really company specific, but I've worked in the tech industry and I've also worked in manufacturing and food and beverage. And it's hard, I think, for companies at a certain scale to understand the scope of their legal problems. In tech, we had all these products at our disposal. Like I'll give an example of privacy. And so all consumer data and websites are heavily regulated. And so there are software products to help with that, like, for example, cookie management and all that. So I found that in tech, we had the spend to manage that scope. It's harder, I think, in a more traditional, like, manufacturing company, food and beverage, consumer focus, to keep up with all those laws. Although you are at the forefront of a lot of customer data and any sort of payment platform, mobile apps, loyalty programs, there's a lot of data coming in. So it's hard to get the resources and to get, I think, institutional backing in certain circumstances when you're in-house, and you might have seen different practices in former companies, and it's not as much readily at your disposal with limited resources in a more traditional company.
Yeah, yeah, you have to put on your business hat as well as your lawyer hat to be working in-house counsel. But I love that you have such a breadth of experience in your IP and an A type work. What do you do for fun?
I really like going to yoga. So that was my example of the yoga instructor who typically they have like 3 or 4 yoga studios they teach at, right? They're freelancers. And so yeah, it's but it is a joy, right, to be able to do that for a living and to really spread. It's not only exercise, but it's like a mind body connection and being a lawyer, it's a high stress profession. So we need to let off steam, literally and figuratively. So yeah, I also like to dance. And so yeah, and travel. And so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of outreach on mindfulness and wellness with especially women lawyers and different organizations that I'm in. And I love it about going to, I mean, it's one thing to do yoga at home or have a yoga practice of your own, but it's something to go to a yoga center and smell the incense or whatever they have. And so it's like it's like traveling without having to travel very far.
Right, right. It is a chemical change in your mind when you have the aromatherapy.
Definitely different. Are you considering becoming a yoga instructor?
That's a good question. I just never had the time for it. It's the training is like 250 hours or 500 hours and so maybe one day. Yeah, there are a lot of things that I would love to do if I had the time.
Yeah, I do know a couple of attorneys who did that, and for the maybe more for the transformational experience than to actually go and work in a studio. But some do, and some just really enjoyed it going to the next level. But I'm sure whatever you
Yeah.
choose to do, it will be great and supportive. I've really enjoyed catching up with you. I've known you for a little while now, but over the pandemic, we all got sort of shuffled about. And thank you for sharing your lovely background of San Francisco and actually being in that area.
Thank you.
Well, thank you everybody for listening to today's episode of the Success Partner podcast. Again, I'd like to thank Rina Wang for coming on, and I will have her contact information in the show notes. And stay tuned for the next episode.